Good times.
So some of the information that I would pass on to people that are coming to visit a doctor like me in the gold camps is occasionally I'll see folks that have just arrived in the gold camps, and I'd be happy to pass along some advice to them. Some of the things that we have discovered about the gold camps is that 1 in every 5 person that comes to work in the mines might very likely be dead within 6 months of arriving. So it's a very unhealthy place to live and work. It's the way that miners live, it's the way they work, the dangerous kind of work they do. Miners, they eat poorly, they don't eat a well-balanced diet, they don't eat enough fruits and vegetables. They often sleep in tents or shacks that are poorly ventilated, they're crowded together. The food they're eating is poorly preserved, it's dried foods, doesn't have the variety of that people need to remain healthy. And think of the kind of work that miners do. They're working with heavy rocks, shovels. Sometimes they're working with explosives. So I treat all kinds of injuries for rock slides, for cave-ins, for injuries resulting from dynamite explosions. And then, because miners are out here in the gold camps away from their families and away from women, doing all kinds of work, living in very unsanitary conditions, well, this does not bring out the best in human nature. So the men, they fight too much, they drink too much. There are murders, there's fights, there's knife fights, there's suicides, lots of suicides in the gold camps. So the kind of advice that I give to people that are first coming to visit the gold camps is look around, see everything there is to see, listen to all the different languages people are speaking, listen to the music, hear people's stories, but then pack up and leave the gold camps. If you want to make money, plant fruit trees, plant vegetables, start a farm and a ranch, sell meat to the miners, and that's how you're going to get rich. That's my advice. Sure. Now, the type of medicine that we are being taught in the medical schools is called the heroic theory of medicine. Now, I went to medical school in London back in the 1830s, and this heroic theory of medicine, some of these ideas are dating back hundreds of years to the time of the Greeks. Some of those theories are, as we believe that all sickness and disease comes from an imbalance of the fluids in your body. So when I listen to somebody's symptoms, if we think you're deficient in a certain fluid, we're going to build you up with medicines. If we think you have excesses, well, we're going to give you a mercury pill to scour you out like you've never been scoured out before. And it's because we believe being scoured out with this violent shock to your system, this is going to release a burst of nutrients into your system that's going to help people heal. We think that people can be sick because of the blood in their body. We think you can have too much blood, you can have bad blood, or you can have an unhealthy congestion of blood someplace in your body. And it kind of makes sense. If you see an area that's inflamed or swollen, we think there's a congestion of blood there. That's easy to fix. We're going to bleed you. We're going to use knives like the bleeding fleam I have here. We're perhaps going to attach leeches to you. These are all ways to remove the bad blood from your system, so it's going to build up fresh, healthy blood. So this theory of medicine, the heroic theory of medicine, for some reason is very unpopular. It's very harsh on people. There are some detractors that claim it creates as many problems as it's trying to cure. But it's what we're taught in the medical schools. Now, because this is such an unpopular type of medicine, all of a sudden alternative forms of medicine have become popular in the mid-19th century. There is homeopathic medicines, which are largely based on giving people minute bits of medicine. The idea there is that you're giving people medicines that increase the symptoms you have. For instance, if you have a cold, a regular doctor like me is going to give you something to dry up your nose, but a homeopathic doctor would advise, we're going to give you something that makes your nose run more because that's your body trying to heal itself. It's a good theory, but there's been no science to prove this is correct. Other forms of alternative medicine have gotten started as patent medicines. Something very common in rural areas is that families have medicines they pass down generation to generation. Some of these are based on Native American medicines. So people have started bottling some of their home remedies, and at first some of them were pretty effective, but then pretty soon the charlatans got on the market and realized I can put anything in a bottle claim it cures anything and everything, and it's going to sell. So what most patent medicines have is lots of alcohol, they have morphine, things that are very tough for you. They might make you feel better at first when you drink it, but in the long run, it's probably not going to do any good at all. So it's hard to say what form of medicine is the best at this time because there's so many different types that are available. These saws,
no, the porcelain.
let's see, the porcelain person, that's a good question. This is my doctor's lady. I'll tell you what a doctor's lady is, what the purpose is. In my time, it is inappropriate for a man other than a lady's husband to touch her. If I have women come to me and they've got a sore back, they've got a sore knee, I need to treat them, and only at last resort would I be allowed to physically touch her. It's only if her husband or family member was present. So by having a doctor's lady, a little doll or a little porcelain figure like this, a patient could come to me and go, "Doctor, I have a pain in my lower back right here." And they could point to the place that's bothering her, and I would be able to treat her without touching her. That's the purpose of having this doll. This is actually a doll from the 1840s and 50s, my period. It's called a Frozen Charlotte doll. I use it as my doctor's lady.
Leeches really are helpful, though, aren't they? Can't they eat?
They're helpful to us. Maggots do that. Maggots do that. The leeches are very effective. I think leeching, they think it's been done. The Egyptians were using leeching. So leeching has been around for a long time. It goes back to this theory that thinking changing the blood in your body would be a healthy thing. That if you're sick, why not change the blood in your body? That's something that you can change with very little effort.
Use maggots?
They did. Something that has been, again, known for centuries was if somebody had a terrible wound that was being treated as best they could, and they would look and they'd see these terrible maggots wiggling around in this wound, and people realized if the person had perhaps been immobile and couldn't shoo those away, go, hey, the wound's a lot healthier with the one that had maggots on it than the one that was covered over here. And they found that certain types of maggots only eat necrotic or dead flesh. And if that isn't removed or somehow falls off or comes out of a wound, that itself is going to cause additional infection. So here it was something that people somehow discovered, probably by accident thousands of years ago. They found, wait a minute, this is very effective, and it has very low impact on the person, and it's fabulously successful. So that's maggots and leeches. While they can be quite revolting at first, wow, in some ways they're incredibly effective. This is a homeopathic medicine. Anybody could buy these in local stores. They were available in kits of 20, 30, 50, 100. And as these got popular in the middle of the 19th century, people started to think maybe they were more effective. Weren't necessarily more effective, only they had less side effects than the traditional type of medicine that doctors were giving. So they got to be very popular. It's different alternative forms of medicine based on roots and natural products. They got popular as well. None seemed to be any particularly more effective than the others, but is whether or not they had less side effects is how they got to be come into common usage. So by mid-century, these alternative forms of medicine got to be so popular that in many states they dissolved the need to have a license to be a doctor. So it was entirely legal for anybody to put up a sign, say they were a doctor. Maybe they were selling homeopathic medicines. They were just reading the instructions out of the book, how to dose somebody. Anybody could buy opium, morphine, laudanum. It was completely unregulated. You could treat yourself.
I imagine there's probably quite a few addicts. After they got well, but they still like their morphine.
They're in rock slides, they're cave-ins, they have injuries from explosions, from putting. They also fight. They drink too much, and you're probably going to be alive a year from now.